I believe we can start slowly. Welcome to our 5th replication workshop. Big thank you to Agencja Friuli Venezia Giulia for organizing today's session that will focus on integrated energy system and renewables. Today's meeting will be divided into 2 sessions, as you saw on the agenda. First, we'll focus on energy communities, and second, we'll give an overview on renewables integrated in district heating networks. We will have 2 dedicated Q&A sessions. I hope you will all enjoy today's workshops. As you saw, maybe noticed, we will record today's meeting. I hope you are all okay with this. So not to extend, let's start our energy community session. And with first presentation, the legal and regulatory framework for energy communities. What are the challenges and opportunities? I give the floor to Giulio Cerino Abdin from Polytechnic of Turin.
Good morning and thank you, Zanetta. Just one check if you are able to hear me well and to see the presentation.
Yes, I can hear you well. We can hear well and see the presentation.
Okay, perfect. I will talk about the legal and regulatory for any communities and opportunities, focusing on the national and the Italian regulatory framework. This is the index of the presentation. We will start from recast to 2030 and the RED II directive, and we will look to the Italian transposition and the incentives that are currently in Italy in an experimental phase, in a transition phase. Talking about the European directive, energy communities, and as well as the self-consumption collective group are defined inside the European directive RED II, and currently we are in the national transposition of the European directive made by each single nation. I will not go in deeper inside each single national transposition, but I give you here a link from RESCOP that has a comparison between all the national transposition. I think it's a very useful link. Different national transposition define different scheme and different boundaries for the renewable energy communities, and different incentive scheme put the sharing of the renewable energy between collective self-consumption user or renewable energy communities. I will now give you some example of the Italian situation and the Italian regulatory framework that will introduce also the next 2 presentation of ènostra and Regalgrid. In Italy, we have currently we are in a transition phase. We have not completed the transposition, but now we have an experimental transition phase with incentives defined for collective self-consumption groups and renewable energy communities. This transition phase will end after 60 days. 60 days after the national transposition of the RED II directive. At the national mental phase define 2 different levels to share renewable energy: at building level with the collective self-consumption groups, and from different users located in different areas. In Italy, the definition of the boundaries of the renewable energy communities is defined by the area, the grid, that is served by the same medium to lower voltage transformator. We'll give you a short presentation of the different scheme. If we talk about collective self-consumption group, we talk about a single building, multiple user system. The Italian definition is that we need one building, it's mandatory, and we need a plant on the building. The power of the RES, renewable energy source plant, must be lower than 200 kilowatt, but typically the typical layout is a single RES plant lower than 20 kilowatt. It's due to bureaucratic simplicity here in Italy. And then in the same building, that is just one building with a collective self-consumption group, we have different users located in the same building. And also it's mandatory to have multiple users. Different scheme is represented by the so-called renewable energy communities. It's multiple plants, multiple users. Users and plants must be served by the same medium to low voltage transformer, but there is the possibility that in the next month and year will be proposed the extension to high to medium voltage after the RED II directive transposition, because it's very difficult to work under the medium to low voltage transformer and limit the application to low voltage user. In the renewable energy communities, we can have multiple RES plants. Each single renewable energy source plants must have a power lower than 200 kilo. It's mandatory for the single power plant, renewable power plant. We need multiple users, and so the different user, according to RED II directive, could be a residential user, small medium enterprise, PME, it's in Italian, small medium enterprise, public authorities, and local authorities. And also the different user could be user, simple user, producer, or prosumer. We will go deeper in detail with the next slide. How the self-consumption group work, the actors and roles here for the Italian case study. We need one building and we have the national grid. We have boundaries defined by the building walls, we can say, and inside the building walls we have multiple users. Private, commercial use, private or commercial users. We have the renewable energy source plant, and we have also the Italian layout is also characterized by the shared electrical utility. We have different, inside the same building, we have different meter, different electrical connection for the single user, like the residential user, and the shared electrical utility like elevator, lighting on the stairs, or for example, also charging for electrical vehicle. How the self-consumption group work? If we can share electricity and buy electricity and make self-consumption. If we consider the energy purchasing, each single user or also prosumer, if we talk about shared electrical utility, purchases the electricity at market price. So we have, in sometimes, each single user or the prosumer also, if he is not producing, take the energy and buy the energy at market price with the private contract. Then, if the power plant is producing, the self-consumption, direct self-consumption is realized on the shared electrical utility. And we have energy saving, and we save also money of about 15 cents of euro per kilowatt hour. Then, if the renewable energy source plant, typically is a photovoltaic system, is producing, but there is no energy needs inside the buildings, inside the shared electrical utilities, the electricity is sold to the grid, and the income are taxed. And so what happens with collective self-consumption group? In the Italian framework regulation, they work as a virtual point of exchange for the energy. Because with the self-consumption group, the energy balance, selling versus purchasing, is performed at our detail. It could generate incentives, and the incentive value is 11 euro cent per kilowatt hour and is not taxed for each kilowatt hour that is exchanged in this energy balance made at our detail. And so it's a virtual exchange because the single private commercial user, this amount of energy is taken by the grid and paid, and the energy exchanged is measured by the other meter, and looking at the data collected by the meter in each single hour, we make this energy balance that consent to have incentives. A similar scheme, but a little bit complex, is related to renewable energy communities. The actors and roles are multiple and different. We have the grid area served by the medium to low voltage transformator. We have, for example, the residential prosumers who make self-consumption that is not accounted by any meter. And then we have a meter that measures the exchange of the energy produced in the energy mix of the prosumer. We have small medium enterprises, prosumer, and public authorities who work in the same way. And then we could have simple producers who produce energy and simple users who only need energy, like users without their own PV plants, for example, or like the mobility and the if we look to energy purchasing, each single user, it's free to purchase the electricity with a single contract at market price. If we look to self-consumption, each prosumer saves money with self-consumption. This amount of energy is not accounted inside the renewable energy community. For the residential prosumer, for example, we have in addition the possibility to have a 50% tax deduction on the plant installation cost. So it's very important, this aspect. And then we have the moment with where the RES, renewable energy source plant, produce energy and sold their energy to the grid. The energy is first of all sold to the grid and taxed. Finally, we have the user that use energy. With what happens with the renewable energy communities? As the first example, we realize an energy balance, but it's a virtual energy balance made on the single meter measurement, and all the energy balance is made at our details and generate incentives. The value is greater, is 12 cents per kilowatt hour. It's untaxed, and go to the renewable energy communities. All the selling income also of the energy that is sold by the producer and the prosumers, the yellow arrow, go to the renewable energy communities. So the balance is virtual because each single user is not physically connected to the producer, but it's a balance made on the single meter measurement and made for each single hour. So this is the regulatory framework. Criticalities and opportunities represented for this framework, the Italian framework, is that renewable energy communities and collective self-consumption group need to realize their self-consumption at hourly level. It's very important because we are talking about a system that is well balanced or must be well balanced. They need to implement a real balance. And this aspect is interesting, for example, to realize new business for companies that are providing services for the renewable energy communities, balancing, making the monitoring of the system and activation of users in a real time. In the next presentation, we will see an example of a small medium enterprise working on the service providing. Then there are some criticalities that must be analyzed, because the renewable energy communities needs to define the methods for the incentive distribution inside the renewable energy communities, because the incentives must be used to pay, for example, the new PV plant realized, that could be realized by a private user that realize a PV plant higher than their needs. And so the renewable energy communities needs to define the scheme to distribute the incentive between prosumers, producers, and simple users. It's a critical aspect because there is not a universal rule, but each single renewable energy communities needs to define their own scheme that is well balanced on the share between prosumers, producer, and simple users. And then currently in Italy we have a scheme, and so the renewable energy communities has the pros and cons compared to the other less incentive scheme. This was a very short introduction in order to present the next two presentations that will go more in detail with a practical example. Thank you.
Thank you. Giulio, could you answer us, are renewable energy communities affordable compared to the alternatives?
Okay. It's the last, the pros and cons compared to the other rest incentive. In Italy, currently, as I told, we are in experimental phase. And so, for example, a single residential user could not realize energy communities, but try to go with a prosumer at a single user level. For example, we have metering, and the net metering balance for a residential user, my enterprise user, is defined at 1 here level. And so if I about a PV plant realized for the single user currently in Italy could decide to have, if it's residential, to have the 50% tax deduction, realize, for example, a 3 kilowatt plant, and make energy exchange with the grid with the balance calculated on 1 year. It's the payback time of this solution. It's the same about of the payback time that we will see in the next presentation. In the case of ènostra, in some example that will be shown. And so currently there is no convenience in sharing this energy, but also the RED II initiative, the RED II legislation told about that is not a sharing of energy that will need to realize is not made to realize I missed the word scopo di lucro. Sorry for the Italian speaker. If they don't need to have a budget realized to make sharing. It's a choice, and a bigger plant and share the energy with the same payback time of the possibility of working alone. And there are evolution probably because the energy communities could be the future solution, because talking about 1 year energy balance is not the same of talking about 1 hour energy balance. The renewable energy communities, it's a real renewable energy use. It's in the other case, the net metering, I use the grid as electricity storage, but the renewable energy is used by the neighborhood. And the other example, pros and cons, you will show something in the presentation of ènostra, but in this experimental phase, if we are talking about public authorities, for example, the first renewable energy communities that we have also here in Piedmont, and also we will see some example in the other region of Italy. The first has been realized with the public grant. And so talking about business, when we talk of a plant realized with public, it's very easy to talk about the convenience. But as Chiara Brogi, in the next presentation, we will show to you, we are now moving to real renewable energy communities realized with no grant, that they will need to work with only with the incentive, the incentive that I showed you, and will need to realize a very balanced economic and energy communities. Thank you.
Thank you. And in your opinion, will the renewable energy communities be the only solution in grid energy exchange?
It's in part, yeah, it's possible, because as I told, we are moving from energy balance from 1 year to 1 hour, and so it's very important also for the grid balancing, that with the increase of, for example, solar, because the photovoltaic system are one of the plants that are more used in the renewable energy communities, but it's important to realize systems that are well balanced. Here in Italy, we have one of the high percentage, for example, of energy produced by photovoltaic system in Europe, and in some areas where there are big power plant, solar photovoltaic power plant, the grid is not so stable. And so it's important with the burn of this new PV plant, for example, that the balance will be realized at hourly level and not 1 year level. And so it's possible that in the next year in Italy, for example, the net metering will be will disappear, for example, or will be re-evaluated in order to ask also to the citizen, to the residential user, the small user, to start thinking about not 1 year balance, but short time balance in the energy exchange or energy production. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we will hear some practical examples from Italy to answer question how to trigger and manage energy community projects. And first we have Ms. Chiara Brogi from ènostra, will present an approach to set up energy communities.
Hi everyone, good morning. I'm gonna share the screen. Can you see?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So, good morning, everyone. My name is Chiara Brogi, and I'm from ènostra. And I'm gonna explain you a little bit some practical examples that you can see in Italy, in the north of Italy and in the south of Italy. But first, I will present the cooperative I'm working for. It's called ènostra, and it's an energy cooperative that produces and sells renewable, ethical, and sustainable energy. We also realize new collective renewable power plants thanks to our members' investments. The third activity that we conduct is that we provide services and solutions for the energy saving, because we think that this is really important in the energy transition. We have information service and training service to raise awareness and tackle energy poverty, especially for vulnerable consumers. And last but not least, in 2020, we started with the activation of renewable energy communities and collective consumption configuration. But let's talk about the objective of renewable energy communities. So we can say that it's a technical substitution, but we need to think that this technical substitution has to put into society. So we have technical objectives, but as well social objectives. Let's start with the technical ones. So the first one, of course, is promoting energy transition from a fossil fuel model to a renewable model, more decentralized and more democratized. Is to promote instant self-consumption at the local level in order to determine positive impacts on the distribution system. The second objective is to model input and offtake of energy in the system in order to maximize the instant self-consumption, and so to let's say take energy savings from that. We have to think about allocating in the right way costs and benefits among the different stakeholders and different members of the renewable energy communities, especially on the base of the context and on the rules that are established inside the community, as we will see afterwards. And last but not least, is to gather real data referring to concrete cases to be shared with bodies responsible. Because as Giulio was saying before, this law that we have now in Italy, it's only a transitional one. So we still need to implement the last final transposition of the Renewable Energy Europe Directive. So we need to support and foster this transposition with real data and a real study. As I was saying before, besides the technical objectives, there's also social objectives. One of the most important ones is that this kind of configuration can make energy transition more desirable and more accessible, also because of the economical benefits that can bring. Another one is to raise awareness among the community's members, especially on how to use energy, with the aim, as I was saying before, to maximize the energy savings. Renewable energy communities can also, let's say, reduce families and small medium enterprises' energy expenditure, with a particular attention, if we want, to vulnerable consumers, so it can mitigate energy poverty. It can help to transition through like a model that is going to be decentralized and democratized, where the real protagonists of the transition are going to be citizens, municipalities like local authorities, and small medium enterprises. And we can hope for a model that really concentrates on the territory instead of, let's say, profit, for example. Another social objective is, of course, to build win-win relationship among the different stakeholders. There can be municipalities, of course, but also families, medium enterprises. And in this way, we can also foster local economy. And as well, if we start forming or training local resources on the energy management, we can also create new working opportunities. Then this model can help to find new innovative entrepreneurship models that involves territories, that for ènostra especially is really important, and it can trickle collective action that goes beyond energy, so that can revitalize local community and foster inclusion. But how can we do that? So ènostra has a sort of model, and it's based on 4 phases. The first one, and I think the most important one, is the feasibility study. So in this study, we first need to make a study on the context and on the objectives of the proponent. In this study, we identify the sites where we can realize a PV plant, and based on some estimation, we can deliver the first business plan where we highlight costs and benefits for all stakeholders. The second phase is the model definition, and of course the membership collection. So we start with launching the campaign to inform the citizenship, the citizenship, and through events and through information desks that are really important in order to really get informed those who are going to be the members of our community. And in the meantime, we also help the members trying to define those criteria that will lead the distribution of economic benefits in the community. And lastly, we give legal advice to set up the juridical subject that's going to be the renewable energy community, because there was, as Giulio was saying before, the energy community needs to be a juridical subject apart. The third phase is the PV plant realization. So we have also to get through this phase. And the fourth and last phase is the real activation of the renewable energy community. So the registration of the community in the portal. And in this phase, we also give like a training to the members of the community, because our aim is also to give them the self-sufficiency that they need to let's say manage the community after we leave. I will give you some example now. So this is the first one. It's Qui Abito. It's a social housing. Sorry for the AUC. It's Autoconsumo Collettivo in Italia, but it's collective self-consumption in English. So Qui Abito is a social housing, and the project was selected by RSC because they are going to inform the legislator with a study on the barriers and the potential of these configurations in order then to support the last transposition of the European directive. The social housing is made by 4 high efficiency buildings, and on each building there is a PV plant of about 10-12 kilowatt. And it's now under, because they are high efficiency buildings, the energy that the PV plant is now producing serves basically all the consumption from the centralized heating pump. So we are evaluating, let's say, financing another 19 kilowatt plant on the available surface, where the let's say, social housers were more prone to participate to the configuration. And on this, we are going to install devices to monitor production and consumption. Regalgrid devices that Walter will talk about it later. So a little bit of timeline. In January 2020, we presented the configuration to the social housers, and we collected around 60 expressions of interest around the fourth building. We made a lot of effort in this because we thought that the first impression was really important for the social housers, and I think also one of the main elements that get us through this this first phase was also the importance of the social manager of the social housing, who has real contacts with the inhabitants. In September 2020, we organized a launch event in order to explain the objective and the various phases that we're going through and that they will be involved. And in that occasion, we handed out a questionnaire in order to collect consumption and behavioral data that were needed for RSA studies and analysis. The questionnaire, I have to say, was really difficult for them, but the fact that they went through this and that they actually made an effort to hand it out this questionnaire was really impressive, and told us that there's really an interest in this type of configuration. Another example that I can give you is an energy community that we are realizing in Villanova Forru, which is in Sardinia, in the south of Sardinia. It's a really small village, around 680 inhabitants, and the proponent is the municipality. The municipality that has one really important objective, that is to mitigate energy poverty and thus to reducing the families and the small medium enterprises energy bills. And for doing this, they are gonna cover all the costs and they're gonna leave all the benefits to the citizenship. We chose, so we are now in phase 2, phase 3 of the process that I was explaining before, and so we chose already the site for the PV plant that is going to be the school gym, the cabin that serves the area around the gym school. It's about 160 delivery of point of deliveries. And the potential members, so the expression of interest were about 50 members. We, of course, made an online event, and we also here open information desks for them, where we help them to understand what is renewable energy community, and where we help them with the, let's say, daily routine with their energy bills. Here we can see the impact of the municipality. So we estimated that with the municipality covering the costs, the members of the renewable energy community will have around 166 euros per megawatt hour. And without the municipality giving this, let's say, privilege, it's going to be around 130 euros. So you can see there's a not really a big difference, but there's a difference. So one of the things that we are hoping for is that the regional law, especially the regional law, will provide resources to activate renewable energy communities because they are needed for, especially for the municipality to activate this special initiative. As Giulio was saying, without resources, it's a bit more difficult to activate this type of projects. And last but not least, some criticality, things to improve, and opportunities from these projects. First of all, the criticalities that we hope will, let's say, get through with the final transposition. The first one is for sure the proximity criteria. So we can now realize an energy community under the same transformation cabin in the low medium voltage. And we think that this limit should be reconsidered because it limits the expansion of the community, and it's basically nowadays really inefficient because you would have to constitute more juridical subjects when you have more members and more cabins. It is important to well define the flux of information between the bodies responsible. It is important to include local entities that are so far excluded, but they can widen participation, and especially they can give the context, as I was saying before, and something more to the territory instead of not having them. And as also I was saying before, new regional law should facilitate renewable energy communities activation by providing resources without bureaucratic burdens. Opportunities instead, renewable energy communities can be seen a reliable mitigation strategy in the sustainable energy action plans for the municipalities. They can increase awareness on the use of energy in the local context, so they can help with the energy savings. Because the renewable energy community can actually, the rules of the distribution of the benefits can be decided by the community, so they can be really different. We can also activate actions that goes beyond energy, and in the ways the use of energy becomes a pretext to engage citizens on commons. For example, the economical benefits can be put on social projects or environmental projects in the municipality. They help building a mutual benefit relationship, as I was saying before, between the different stakeholders of the community, and they can be implemented in order to mitigate energy poverty. For example, if you develop a renewable energy community on a popular house, that could be really good for the vulnerable consumers to have both an economic benefit, but also the education and the training to actually save energy. So they become more closer to the energy theme. And last but not least, they have building up a new model that is more decentralized and democratized and decarbonized. And this is my last slide. If you have questions.
With another example from Italy, Mr. Walter Brandolin from Regalgrid will tell us about smart tools as a booster for energy communities.
Okay, let's see if we can see it better. Okay, Regalgrid is a company founded in 2016. We are a producer of a software hardware platform to optimize self-consumption in aggregated schemes. Our company was born in 2016 officially, but since 2012 we were making tests in laboratory to explore the possibilities to optimize the energy generation, solar generation, and in the synchronization of battery functioning. But then in that period of work, we realized that optimization outside a single node was much wider, much important than the single optimization of the node. Therefore, we started to collaborate with all manufacturers of inverters and batteries to try to create a platform with a single protocol to make everything to dialogue, and even with different hardware in a single installation. This is the introduction of Regalgrid, and we will go through to our company profile, what we have seen as a problem, with our solution, our proposal to sort it out, and to describe the architecture, the services, and what we have been doing until now, even prior to before the regulatory framework that we have now in Italy, and in the areas in which we are working now, in countries and opportunities that our technology gives to aggregation. The idea of Regalgrid was to try to identify the critical part of the aggregation, and this is what I was trying to explain. What we have seen, and in the late 2010 and 12 and all these years, is there was a very important development and deployment of renewable energy generated by PV, but at the same time there were some problems that were emerging from not synchronization in between production and consumption. As by principle, PV is not programmable generator. The situation was that in between generation and consumption, there was a mismatch that could have created issues in the grid, and also decrease the contribution of the generators to the community, to the benefits for the community and for the users. And in that analysis was supported by some experiences we had in foreign countries, and mainly in Australia, as Australia is one of the countries with the highest deployment of PV, and with the highest quantity of issues generated by the non-synchronization between generation and consumption. Regalgrid is operating mainly in Italy, but has two companies, one in Spain, one office in Spain, and one company in Australia, as the countries we have identified as the most suitable for our application. So coming back to the problem we have identified, we realized that a system, an intelligent platform, which was able to put the energy generation and consumption together, was missing, and the rapid deployment of the PV system would have only increased eventual issues coming from this desynchronization. In economical terms, that would be a lengthening period, and in a reduced renewable energy contribution, and a different contribution, economic contribution from the renewable assets. So what we concentrate, if you can move to the next slide, we concentrate our efforts to create a platform that was able to communicate and to control in real time energy assets in low voltage, to offer to the participants of aggregation the possibility to maximize benefits coming from renewables, and to offer the possibility to work with any type of asset to any type of producer manufacturer, and we did a kind of generator and energy, renewable energy consumption. And from that point of view, we developed a new platform that works through internet in real time, reading, metering, and controlling the assets in an aggregation scheme in order to reach a target that is the balancing in between production and consumption. As you can imagine, it's not an easy target, but we were working since 2016 in collaboration with the manufacturers of inverters and heat pumps, and the last one is the manufacturers of EV charging stations, to identify the drivers to control the assets with their agreements, of course, in order to be able to read directly from the generator and from the consumption part the situation of the energy and how that energy can be consumed or direct to one node instead of other, depending on the situation. And by controlling the energy in this way, we are able to improve the contribution of the renewables, and we are able also to balance the cluster of nodes and offer bigger benefits to the participants. That was made as an original idea of Regalgrid, and after 2018 we saw a possibility to make that happen into offering specific services to energy communities. 2012, with the last the regulatory framework we have in Italy now, offers us the chance to make our platform run into a specific target, which is maximize collective self-consumption, which is rewarded by Italy, and it's the exactly matching of how our technology can improve aggregation schemes based on a very difficult situation, which is a non-programmable production and real-time communication between different assets, different brands, and different situations, different requirements. Can you move to the next one, please? The solution, the platform we have created is a software hardware platform. It is made of a local device which needs to be installed in every single electric board of the every single participant. So every single participant, no matter if it is a consumer or if it is only a generator, needs to have a device to be monitorized. The device takes in real time the information from our device from the generator of the consumption, and broadcast it to the network, to the net, so to our cloud, that elaborates a strategy based on our proprietary algorithms to maximize the result of the target setup. In this case, the target is the balancing. So in a community which renewables, consumption, and production, our local devices called SNOCU, which means Smart Node Control Unit, will be reading in real time and communicating through internet to our cloud, to our platform cloud, and the platform will be elaborating strategies on how to optimize the self-consumption of the surplus of energy available in in this cluster, in the energy community. That the system needs to works with internet. So it's an example of how the technologies, it's a clear example of how the technologies and the intelligence through new technologies can be used already now to improve any type of aggregation scheme by using very simple services which are already configured and ready to work. And this is what we'll see in the next slides. Okay. This is just an example of how the system can be configured. We can have different types of inverters produced by many different producers. Also, we have to dialogue with thermal drivers, thermal generators, and EV charging stations. Our strategy is to work with the three main drivers. We don't make any domotics at home, but we communicate and control the most high-consuming assets of a house or an industry, and by making them, communicating them the excess of energy available inside the cluster. This information, so the main three drivers we use are renewable generation, so PV systems, thermal generation, so heat pumps, and electric mobility, so EV charging stations. And our approach is to be hardware independent. So the whole all these complicated efforts we are trying to put it in place day by day, even more complicated by the fact that we are working with several manufacturers of different brands that will not be willing to dialogue between them. It's like imagine to dialogue with your competitor. A third-party platform, an independent platform, a hardware agnostic platform, is really comfortable for all them, as they are energy community ready by using our platform to communicate with other assets from other brands and from different worlds. It's not easy to imagine photovoltaic with thermal and thermal with EVs. Some companies have changed to make a single package for all the things, but they are not able to communicate to other companies or to other brands. So we are a third party, an independent third party that reads and communicates and controls in real time assets from many different manufacturers, with the target of maximize self-consumption by using all the three drivers: batteries, thermal accumulation, and EV charging stations. Can you move to the next one, please? Okay, the idea of the energy communities is to maximize the benefit by increasing as much as possible self-consumption of the energy available. So the excess of energy is communicated to our platform by our SNOCUS, local SNOCUS, and the platform elaborates the strategy and says, I had 3 batteries in this cluster which have capacity to be charged. So local SNOCU of the single inverters of the three nodes with capacity available gives a command, communicate a command to the hybrid inverter to charge batteries up to their possibility or up to the same power the excess of energy is putting in the network. At the same time, we communicate with the heat pumps. We can do it in 2 different ways, by protocols so by mobiles or by dry contacts, and heat pumps start a optimized cycle of secondary set point functioning. They increase the consumption of energy, but at the same time they offer a high output of thermal power. And EV charging stations can be controlled to give as much the maximum output power to charge the vehicles. This controls and the platform is also able to dialogue with third-party platforms through protocols or through APIs. So the system is also ready for integration with third-party platforms, and which is what it is required for certain customers, for customer targets such as utilities, energy companies, or laboratories or tests. Can you move to the next one, please? This is one example of a picture of a real-time energy community running. The way we can analyze and see how the company, how this cluster is running. The green roofs have excess of energy and are exporting energy to the net, while the red ones are consuming energy, and you can see the values of a single picture. And what we can do from that data is to evaluate if there is a capacity of batteries remaining, or there is any kind of thermal or EV charging stations available, and communicate in real time the excess of energy we are now getting from the nodes you can see on green. There is a dashboard in which we can see how the system performs by day, by week, by month, by hour, by minute. And of course, it's the same dashboard the operators can access to. And this is the dashboard for the professional user, and the dashboard for the single, participants in an energy community are simpler, and the system is more automatic. And of course, there are less options to set up the platform way of work. Can you move to the next one, please? One of the examples of a same day, same PV production with or without in communication with the platform. And this is the case of an heat pump, which is a programmable source, which has a part of manual and human programming, and also in automatic programming, which is the second set point of working. In this case, the consumption of the heat pump was doubled. So we went from 8 kilowatt hour a day to 15 kilowatt hour a day. But as you can see, the consumption outside PV production was reduced, and thermal output inside the house was higher, and domestic hot water was even higher. So we just took advantage of what the heat pump in this case was offering us, and we just communicated the excess of energy to the heat pump, and the heat pump made the rest. And this 7 kilowatt hour of energy times 100 of participants make a huge difference of consumption compared to a system that has not the possibility to dialogue, to communicate with our platform, the one you can see on the left hand side. Can you move to the next one, please? This is an example of the app for the end user. As you can see, it's a very simple app, very easy to read. The main difference between this app and a monitoring app is the fact that on the same app, you can see it can be seen the performance of the single node, so my own performance, consumption and production or whatever I have at home, but also how my performance goes into the energy community. At the same time, I'm able to see how my behavior, my energy behavior is affecting the energy community. And I can see how the availability of energy, the energy in the community, and how can I perform to increase or maximize my contribution to the aggregation. It's a very simple app, and it is also able to transform kilowatt hour into euros, which everyone can understand. And it is also supported by, can you move to the next slide, please? Supported by a portal, which is much different compared to the professional portal, in which you can see exactly the performance of every single asset of your own house, but also how these assets and how yourself are consuming the energy available in the community. This let's say this information has two different targets. The first one is to increase awareness about energy and how the way we consume the energy, but also to show to the participant how automatically, just for being part of a community, the assets that the participant has at home and are able to dialogue with the platform perform, and at the same time energy in excess is available in the community. So there's a complete control of the assets by showing in real time how the assets perform, how the energy is what volume of energy is available into the grid in real time, and how can I decide to move, so to make some load shifting from midnight to midday, but also how my heat pump will be running in a better, increased or a different way because of excess of energy in the community. Can you move to the slide, please? We will see just roughly 4 examples of real communities we create in Italy in the last years. Some of those were made prior to the regulatory framework, so were projects and trials. Some others were made in embedded networks, so technically possible to create. This one is made in Slovenia, and in which we have a single PV system that is communicating excess of energy to different nodes in the city. Nodes where, thanks to a specific regulatory framework, nodes were able to contribute with their consumption to the self-consumption, collective self-consumption of the system. But the system was also offering to the administration the possibility to evaluate battery size, so make a right sizing of batteries, and to see how the nodes can be aggregated to this small energy community by evaluating the excess of energy, and also to evaluate if there was it would have been interesting to increase and enlarge the PV systems to cover more and more users of consumers of energy.
Walter, I'm sorry, you have 3 more minutes.
Okay,
we need to run.
Move. This is a public also, 3 PVs and 3 batteries, which were working desynchronized. So one was charging and discharging very fast, and the other ones where we charge remaining from one day to other. So what we did was to monitorize the availability of the battery capacity, to control battery charging and discharging, and to optimize self-consumption and energy availability. Move forward, please. This is Switzerland. We have the raggruppamento per il consumo proprio, some kind of self-consumption regulatory framework. They can remove all the child meters from the apartments and leave only one parent meter, and then they have only a single PV, and we made metering, billing, and everything for this self-consumption cluster. Can you move to the next one? This is an embedded network, so they have only one meter, and they have 11 photovoltaics, 10 of those 11 photovoltaics with the batteries. They have one node without anything, so consumer, and a single node with only battery. We were synchronizing of the system, taking into account production in real time, production of energy, and charging and discharging the batteries to maximize self-consumption. Please move to the next one. This is, well, the response of our nicest projects. This is a project in Polonoi, in Bosnia, northern Italy, tested by Regalgrid with 7 virtual nodes, 4 of those with batteries, with photovoltaic, 3 of the photovoltaics with batteries, 1 only batteries and 2 others without batteries, and they after a period of testings, certified that with our technology, the self-consumption moved from 80% without our technology to 93% with our technology. So it was a very, very important communication for us, very important result for us. Move to the next one, please. As already was discussed with the colleagues that were presenting before, what the technology can make to offer to the energy communities or any aggregation system is the capacity to raise awareness and improve behavior of participants. So raise awareness and knowledge about technology, about energy, which is completely missing. And of course, that means a personal behavior change, but also automatically we make a huge increase of self-consumption, as exactly Research certificate. And by controlling the assets that already everyone has at home or is able to have or will have in the near future. This is something that we imagine have to be as a standard to identify possible improvements inside any aggregation system. Without the right information, it's not possible to make the right decision. So when we are trying to put in any case information to all the participants to create right decisions. Some of that part we made automatically, some others we put into consideration. This is my last slide, and I thank you for your time and interest. And if you have any questions.
We are kind of very much behind the schedule, so maybe for the question we will leave some time at the end of each session. So now let's move on to our second session, focused on renewables integrated in district heating networks. And our first presenter, Mr. Riccardo Battisti from Ambiente Italia, with examples from Europe on solar and biomass integrated in district heating network.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Thanks for the introduction and thanks for inviting me to this workshop. My name is Riccardo Battisti and I work for a consultancy company in Italy, Ambiente Italia, and together with my colleague, Chiara Brogi, we are coordinating another Interreg Central Europe project, which is ENTRAIN. ENTRAIN is focusing on, let's say, the concept of the modern district heating. What does it mean? It means that the heat produced and then distributed to the users is produced by using different renewable energy sources and technologies, and trying to exploit the synergy between these sources. That means that the district heating supply becomes more resilient. I mean with this word that it's not that much dependent on specific conditions. That can be the climate, but could be also market conditions, like, for example, the prices of the energy sources, the availability of these resources, or the needs from the users, and so on. So you have a very flexible district heating supply. And I think it's also important to underline that this issue of a modern district heating is related to very hot topics in the energy sector, which is, for example, sector coupling. So, for example, the combination of heat and electricity through the use of large heat pumps. That is something we saw first in Denmark in the large district heating plants, and then also spreading all over Europe. The topic of the energy poverty, so being able to provide heat also to the people who cannot afford, let's say, to pay a lot for that. And then I should mention also the energy communities. We saw before, of course, all examples related to electricity, but we should not forget that in the European directive, when the energy communities concept was introduced, they explicitly talked also about heat and about district heating. So the use of this modern district heating can also be combined with the energy community. My focus today is on a particular synergy, which is biomass plus solar thermal. Why? Because in our ENTRAIN project, we are focusing especially on small district heating networks, and especially located in rural and mountain areas, not in densely populated urban areas. And there, it's where you usually have a high abundance of resource like biomass, and well, for solar thermal, it's easier because it's almost everywhere. And also, there is usually an issue in the local air quality. That's another goal of our ENTRAIN project. And by using a centralized and very efficient district heating production system instead of a lot of small and maybe inefficient biomass boilers, you can optimize the biomass use, the biomass efficiency with an effect on local air quality. So today, I just want to bring you to a sort of virtual tour to some examples of this combination solar biomass in Europe for district heating networks. I start from an example. I will detail a bit about this first example, and then I will give just some, let's say, some concepts of other plants. So this is a plant in the south of Germany, which combines a wood chip boiler with solar thermal. You see, it's a small network, so it's 5 kilometers and 100 buildings. And you saw here the sketch of the plant, of the production plant. Going to some technical details, they have two biomass boilers, a large one and a small one. They have a backup boiler, which is fed by fuel oil, and then they have of course solar thermal. Around 1,000 square meters of collectors, which means if you take into consideration, of course, the space between the collector rows, that you have to reserve a land occupation of 3,000 square meters. Then they also have a hot water storage of 100 cubic meters, and the use of the solar thermal output, let's say, allows the plant operator to save around 600 cubic meters per year of wood chips. What does it mean in terms of coverage? Let's say that the solar part is able to cover the full network load in summer, while if you look at the yearly average, this coverage comes down to 15%, more or less. It's very interesting how they proceed. So these small utilities, let's say these companies, go in a place for proposing this district heating network, and of course offering a competitive price with individual solution. And if around 60-70% of the consumers are ready to sign a preliminary non-binding agreement with the district heating, with the utility for the district heating supply, that means that from an economic point of view, this network is feasible. To have a look at the cost, I put here the summary table. You see that the total cost, the investment cost for the network is around 4 million. And this has been financed in a very, I would say, traditional way. That means 70% through a bank loan by this bank KfW, and 30% by equity of the investor. One issue I want to talk about is the land occupation. Usually, a lot of people say we cannot put solar thermal in district heating, especially in rural and mountain areas, because we need too much space. Well, what I always suggest to do is to have a look at the real situation. So, for example, it's very nice to have a look at the satellite photos, and then you get aware soon of the space occupied by the plant with respect to the area which is supplied by the district heating network. So in this case, I won't say, of course, it's negligible, but it's quite well comparable, let's say, for example, to an industrial area in a small village. So this is the zoom, let's say, of this area for the plant of Busingen. And then you're not forced, of course, to put the solar collectors on the ground. So you can use other alternative solutions like with PV. So for example, this is a noise barrier with solar thermal. This is a PV covering for a parking lot, sorry, a solar thermal covering for a parking lot. And in this case, they put these evacuating tubes, collectors on the building of the heating plant. It's like exactly, sorry, I just go back a bit, but just to show you that also in Busingen, they partially use this solution. So they are not using only the ground, but also the building. So it's really usually, or in many situations, this land occupation problem for these sizes is really a fake problem, I would say. Then you can use, of course, the building. This is the gym, for example, of a quarter where they have the district heating network. And this is this is not a real plant, it's a rendering, but you can see that there could be, of course, a double use, let's say, of the ground, like in the more famous, maybe agrivoltaics. Okay, let's move to another example in Germany. I don't want to go through all the technical details. You will have the presentation, I guess, anyway, afterwards. But I just want to show you that in this case, the system was 100% financed through a loan. And of course, what I want to stress here is the very low interest rate given by this bank, which usually finances this kind of green project, let's say. Of course, with such a low interest rate, then the economic sustainability of the project is much easier. We can move to Sweden. We see here a very interesting project with, once again, you see more or less 1,000 square meters solar thermal, so the size is more or less the same. A nearly solar coverage of 10%, and the most important thing for me is that the biomass boiler can be turned off in the summer period thanks to the solar thermal output. This is, again, an example from the north of Europe in the island of Samsø in Denmark. Is very famous because it's a 100% renewable island. Also, in this case, you see here the size is a bit higher. So we have 1 megawatt wood chip boiler, 2,000 square meter, 500 square meter solar thermal, and quite a large storage. Why is that? Because given the typical, let's say, Danish climate, so you can have clouds also during the summer, and they want to be sure that they are not forced to turn on the wood chip boiler during the summer. And so both the solar thermal plant and the storage are a bit oversized so that they can, let's say, survive without biomass for 2 or 3 completely no sun days. This kind of combination is not only in the north of Europe, so we can go also to the center, as we see in Germany, or even to the south. So this is a very small example from Spain, but I don't care that much in this case about the size. So you see, this is a very small example once again, but the important thing is always this combination. So this is in Spanish, but I think it's quite understandable. So this yellow part is the energy output from the solar plant, while the orange one is the total heat need from the network. And so you see that you have several months where you can completely or almost completely turn off the biomass boiler. Okay, let's go to France. Here is quite a recent example in Chateaubriand. You see here, once again, a small grid, 10 kilometers, so around 20 gigawatt hour per year of heat sold. They had biomass and gas as energy sources before introducing recently a 2,500 square meter solar thermal with 150 cubic meter of storage. You see the cost here is around, of the solar part, only the solar part, 600 euros per square meter, which is, just to give you an idea, around half of the price you usually pay for a good domestic solar thermal system. So in this case, really the size, the scale of the plant is very important to get the cost down. And 70% of this plant has been financed by the National Energy Agency. Then I would close with the last example from Italy. I think this is very interesting. Actually, this is not a combination solar biomass because it's solar integrated in with a cogeneration plant run on gas in the city of Varese, close to Milan. But why is that important? Because the size is more or less the same. So it's a small solar thermal plant that could be combined with the biomass. And you see here, once again, the size. Which is not very big. They used a technical area that they had available in their heating plant. They also used some roof of a technical building here. And it's also very nice. This is just an anecdote, but it's nice. You see that here, it's like a collector is missing here. So you see a hole. And also you see that it's slightly less than 1,000 square meter because at that time, our national incentive system, which is the Conto Termico, was financing only solar thermal plants up to 1,000 square meters. So with one more collectors, which was around 15 square meter, I think, they would have gone above this threshold. And so they would have not been financed, let's say. This plant is performing very well. You see an annual yield of 500 kilowatt hours per each square meter of solar thermal installed, which is around 15% more than what expected, let's say, in the design phase. So to summarize, what is the objective of this synergy between solar and biomass? Is sizing the solar thermal plant for covering the whole summer load, which means the domestic hot water, plus, of course, the thermal losses in the network. As an average during the year, this means 10–20% of coverage, of course, depending on the storage size, as we saw. And the goal is to turn off the biomass boiler or boilers in summer and possibly also in the intermediate season for having a series of advantages. One is, of course, saving fuel and therefore the operating cost. Another one is to reduce the operation at partial load of the biomass boiler. This operation is usually characterized by quite low efficiency. And then to have to ensure a time period where you are sure that the biomass boilers are off, and then you can do maintenance, you can foresee personal holidays and so on. And this is confirmed by on-field real result. I show you here just some example. In Austria, there are several of these district heating network run on biomass and solar thermal. And so it's very important to underline that this is an average value. So it's really representative, and it says that a backup boiler in summer only covers 100% of the annual heat needs. So translated in other terms, it means that the solar thermal is always able to cover the summer load. And this is quite a detailed result from the example of Busingen, the first one I showed you. You have full solar coverage by the end of June to mid-August. Then in June and September, you need a small help, let's say, to the solar from the small biomass boiler or the backup boiler run on oil. That means that with even a normal storage, let's say, not with an oversized storage, you can turn off the large biomass boiler, which is, of course, the most important in terms of cost, from June to mid-October. So as you see, it's quite a wide concept of summer, let's say. Okay, just to close, an example of the solar heat cost. So how much does it cost to produce heat by solar in a district heating system? Of course, this depends on a lot of parameters. So I show you just these examples from Italy. I do a calculation for a 2,000 square meter solar thermal plant, taking into account the incentive and imagining a 10 years bank loan. The heat production cost ranges from 30 to 53 euros per megawatt hour. Of course, one key parameter is the interest rate. I want just to highlight that the lowest value I took for the interest rate is anyway 10 times the one we saw, for example, for the German example. So it's very, it's clear that this cost can also go lower than these values. And another point, I did this calculation over a time period of 15 years because usually Italian utilities are quite conservative because they don't know this technology, they don't have many examples. But the solar thermal lifetime is usually 20 or 25 years. So when you go to Germany or Denmark, where they have a wide experience on these plants, or Austria, they usually do this calculation over 20 or 25 years. And of course, it's clear that distributing this cost, investment cost, over much higher number, let's say, of megawatt hour produced, then the cost goes down. So I invite you to have a look at the online resources we have on our ENTRAIN project, which are, of course, focusing exactly on this topic of the combination of renewables for district heating. You see here we have a training toolbox, we have a newsletter, for example. We have also a specific section dedicated to this kind of virtual study tours to existing plants. So I really invite you to follow the link and to explore these resources. And if you have specific question, of course, you can always contact me by email, and please also follow us on Twitter, because it's there where we publish all of the news. Thanks a lot for the attention.
Thank you very much. Let's wait with the questions for one more presentation. So I give the floor to Francesco Locatelli, who will present the efficient renewable energy-based district heating networks implementation, the ENTRAIN project. Francesco.
All right, sorry. Can you all see the presentation?
Yes.
Yep. All right. So thanks, Riccardo, for the previous presentation. As you also, there are so many good examples all over Europe of these renewable-based district heating networks, but in many places it's not so common. So maybe the know-how, the knowledge is not so spread, all over Europe. There are some cases, but it's not very common everywhere. So maybe if you're not from Austria or southern Germany, it's not so easy to. You might wonder, how do we get there? Where do we start from to reach this stage of implementation? So what do I want to show you today is that is what we are doing in Friuli Venezia Giulia, in our pilot region, also within the ENTRAIN project. And so, well, let's get started. And you all know the what a renewable district heating system is about, and what are the benefits. What I want to focus is that you can reach all these benefits only if the whole project is planned, realized, and operated in a correct way, which is not always as easy as it seems. In fact, mistakes have been made everywhere, both here and all over Europe, and there are some plans that just do not operate, do not work, do not fulfill their economic needs. This is because of oversizing of plans, this is because of bad management of public funds, and all these results into economic losses and higher emissions, because when you have a lot of start and stops of, for example, a biomass boiler, you do have higher emissions on global and local level, And then all this translates into low social acceptance on, because obviously people, they realize that this is expensive, this is not working properly, so why should we do this instead of keeping the way as it is at the moment? So within ENTRAIN, we thought that one solution is to adopt a quality management system. We are transferring in Italy the QM, quality management system. It was first developed in Switzerland and then adopted in Austria and Germany. And why we are doing this? Well, just looking at the numbers, in Austria alone, there is over 2,300 plants and more than 3,000 kilometers of network that were planned and are operated according to the QM guidelines. So, well, if they manage to reach these numbers, it means that the system works. The goal of QM is to guarantee economical sustainability, stable operations and low maintenance, low emissions, and high utilization of the plant. How? It may appear silly, but many times you just don't reach the goals because you don't set the goals in a clear and defined way. So the first step of the QM, of which we translated the guidelines into Italian, but they are available in multiple languages now. The first step is to sit at the same table, the owner of the plant, the planner, and the Q manager, which is a kind of a referee of the system and checks that everything is done properly, basically. And first step is to define the goals, the technical goals, the economical goals, and based on this, then the dimensioning, the right choices can be made from the planner and also from the owner. And what I want to stress a lot is one detail more, that in many cases, you forecast a certain demand in a certain area, you analyze several buildings, and you say, okay, we have this certain demand of heat. Then you build a plant, you lay the pipes down into the road, and then maybe some of these buildings, they just do not connect for any reason. They just don't have the money, they're not interested, they have any trouble in their management or whatever. And then you end up having an oversized plant for the grid, the demand you're gonna supply. So one step very important is that I want to stress is that QM wants you to secure at least 70% of the heat sales before you buy a single pipe. You need to have everything contractualized before building the plant, which again may sound silly, but it's one of the reasons because many plants they just do not operate correctly. So step one, moving to our region. Where do we start from? Step one is to evaluate the actual potential because obviously we want to use local resources. You can see that in our region we have a large forest coverage, and only the blue part is actually a management plan. So there were studies conducted on this forest, and some of these are protected, some of these they are there is an estimation of how much wood resource you can extract yearly, and on the green one we don't have these numbers. We have estimated that only 15% of the annual potential is actually used at the moment, so there is a huge untapped potential in the region. And moreover, there is a good opportunity is that many municipalities in the mountain areas especially do not have a methane grid. So they mostly rely, besides wood, they rely also on GPL or LPG or oil in worst case scenarios for heating. But these municipalities are also the same that do have the larger availability of Class A wood chip. So obviously the match is very clear here, the opportunity is very clear, and we want to try to exploit this. Step two, we analyzed what we already have in the region. We analyzed several plants that we already have in the region, and many of these plants we knew already before that they're going through economical troubles. Why? Well, we try to analyze the data, and just I'm showing here the first criteria, the main criteria of the QM, quality management system, that is the heat density. Basically, you need to justify the length of the grid you have built by selling a certain amount of heat. I mean, this makes a lot of sense. And by rule of thumb, by past experience, in Austria, they've seen that you need to sell at least 1 megawatt-hour over a year per each meter of grid you laid down, of distribution grid you laid down. Well, no surprise, many of our plants, many of our grids in our region, they did not fulfill these criteria, and they're actually very far from these criteria. So no surprise that they are running into troubles. Okay, so let's start talking about what we did in an active way, in a proactive way. We analyzed and we work with municipalities, and we are trying to requalify 4 plants. We are trying to expand a couple of them, trying to make higher this heat density, and we are changing another grid, a small grid, from fossil fuels to biomass, and we are trying also to densify the grids that we analyzed. So just connect new users along an already existing grid, which obviously it's a great benefit because it has a very low investment cost with high benefits. Then step 2, we did a lot of pre-feasibility analysis. We did at least 12 of those, and we shared them with the municipalities that showed interest in this technology. And we studied, first we did a deep evaluation of the heat demand, especially of public buildings, of schools and gyms and hospitals, because these have very high and interesting demands. And then we handed out all this material and also the QM material to the planners and to the municipalities, so we can spread as much as possible the knowledge and these ideas. And hopefully we can get some of these plants up and running within the next couple of years. What we also are trying to stress a lot is that we want to connect in the quickest and in the most efficient way as possible the local forest to the local heat supply. And we are trying to work on tenders with the municipalities and with the region in such a way that you have the same tender for the forest management and the heat supply. And this makes everything much simpler from a management point of view, and especially it gives a lot of stability. So besides bringing a lot of benefits to municipalities, because they use, they extract value, they get money basically from forests they didn't use at all before. They also have, they build a system that is stable and bring back economical benefits locally for everyone for 15-20 years, which is definitely a big benefit for local economy. Just to give a couple numbers from the Gemona de Friuli example, there is about, actually in a school and gym district, there is about 200,000 euros that each year are spent on gas and oil supply, and basically they all leave the region immediately, because obviously gas and oil, they do not come from here around. And just imagine, so that what does it mean to have 200,000 euros that stay locally for the heat supply, that go around from the municipality to the forestry companies to the citizens, and stay around and create wealth for everyone. And second step is, well, you create local jobs. Needless to say, wood forest work requires a lot more work locally than methane and oil. For 100 hours of work locally produced, you only have 6.5 hours of methane, which basically is just the maintenance of the methane boilers, because all the work is done somewhere else. It's done in Russia, it's done in Azerbaijan, or wherever else you extract the natural gas. So you create benefit, you create works, you make the local economy better. So what are the next steps? We want to get these pellet plants up and running. We want to keep monitoring the existing plants, improve the monitoring so we can do deeper analysis and understand where we can improve. And then we want to try to make these plants more complex. We want to introduce solar thermals, and we want to try to introduce industrial waste heat, which is another great source in our region that can be exploited. This is my last slide. What I want really to stress is that a quality management system is not meant to make things more complicated. It's not meant to increase the bureaucracy of such a process, which already is quite complicated. QM and any management system, quality management system, can be really a flexible tool that can and should be adapted to all the different situations, and in such a way that it brings benefits also in reasonable times. We cannot think that we want to implement a full QM process from start to end as they do now in Austria, for example, because that would take maybe 10 years in which nothing else happened. We need to try to adapt it to make simplified version for small plants, grid expansions, and we need to spread the knowledge as much as possible. We need to work with local authorities to define what funding scheme is best for such plants here in our region, which obviously is different than from other regions. So this doesn't want to make things more complicated to guarantee quality, but it wants to be an extra tool that helps reaching the quality. And that was it from my side, and thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Okay, so let's just have a few more of your minutes of your time today for a short discussion. Are there any questions to any of our today's speakers from the audience? Please feel free to ask.
Yes, hello, this is Manfred from Austria. I have a question to our last presenter, Francesco Locatelli, I think. How are these district heatings organized? That means, for example, we have a lot of district heatings in our regions. It's a rural region, and we organize them as cooperatives. This means that also the members of the cooperative, in the sense of energy community or heat community, can make an input from their forests to the district heat system, and have so also benefits. But this is really working only on, we have seen, on basis on a cooperative. Are there similar models in Friuli?
All right, so yeah, we are trying to work on this. Obviously, I think the future is definitely, as you said, creating a cooperative, kind of energy community applied to renewable district heating. But at the moment, we see that there is not so much participation from the users, from the private users, and we are working more on working with the municipality and with forestry cooperatives, which it's definitely a starting point, because the cooperative is already there managing the forest and the heat supply. And then maybe this cooperative can be the starting point where users, private users, can join the cooperative and basically, yeah, become part of the management.
Thank you.
Yes, Stefan, I see your hand.
Yeah, thank you very much for the great and really interesting presentations. We are currently in our region, which is 4 districts south of Munich. We are planning to create a co-op in order to also create an energy community for the whole region, because we also see that there's a big need for district heating and PV power plants for the civil society to participate also in the economic benefits. And maybe what is interesting that in a region close to us, what they started to do is to combine the economic benefits of a PV solar power plant with a district heating. So what they did is they said, okay, maybe it is sometimes a little tricky to actually make it a feasible project, the district heating, but the municipality, for example, really wants it because they want to move on with mitigation measures, SEAP or SECAP. And then what they did is the same energy co-op practically develops the PV power plant and uses some of the economic benefits because, as we heard, the interest rate is really, really low right now. So there is a profit from this PV power plant to actually support and fund the district heating project. So I think that is a very innovative approach at the moment. I just wanted to share it, and thanks again for the great presentations.
And if I may add one point to this very interesting comment, this is a clear example of, let's say, economic sector coupling in a way. So you're combining technologies, but from an economic point of view, so really a shining example. Thanks a lot.
I can see the raised hand from Benedetta Besozzi.
Hi, yes, thank you. Hi, thank you for the presentation. This is Benedetta Besozzi from Italy. I have a question for the presenters of the first session. And so the main, let's say, issue, as you pointed out, of a decentralized production system is that this destabilization of the grid. So one solution is to find solution to maximize the self-consumption, but also there is an opportunity for participating to the flexibility services for the grid. So I would like to understand from you what are the current obstacles in terms of from technological and also regulatory perspective for renewable energy communities to participate to flexibility services to the grid, and what are the future perspective?
Okay, I don't know, I try to give an answer, and if Chiara or Walter would like to talking about renewable energy community and flexibility services. As I told before, in some areas, also in Italy, we are facing problems in the grid. But if we are talking about the capability of renewable energy communities to give also flexibility services, in my opinion, the current situation for the renewable energy communities is that we are current the situation, they don't are able to give the flexibility services because the approach is to realize this 1 hour balance in order to avoid to create a problem on the grid. But if we want to realize flexibility services, we need to have, for example, storages, or we need to have also other kind of storage like mobility to integrate a huge number of cars, electric car, in order to be able to give a charge and discharge on the grid and to realize flexibility service. looking about storages, if you consider in the renewable energy communities, the energy could be also stored into electrical storages, but if we take the actual price for the user, for final user, for a residential user, talking about energy storages for electricity, the price are so the installation of energy storages to realize flexibility services is not so convenient. Different is the capability to have charge and discharge of mobility, and in this situation, the renewable energy communities that is that has a service able to activate the car, for example, the car charging, could be represent a solution for also providing flexibility services for the grid, but is not related to the renewable energy community. It's related to the capability to charge and discharge the mobility. That is the aspect that is more interesting currently.
Thank you.
More insights or questions? Okay, if not, I have a question for Mr. Riccardo and Francesco. Do you think the concept of renewable energy communities based on the shared energy production and community-owned installation could be applied also to the renewable energy sources-based district heating networks? Do you think there's a link there?
Yes, what's for sure there is, let's say, not that much discussion as there is, for example, going on for renewable electricity communities, of course. But I think what was underlined in the comment, in the first comment by the Austrian participants is very interesting. So there is a lot of experience in district heating run on by cooperatives. It's in Austria, but it's also in Germany, and there are, let's say, the most interesting examples, maybe all the oldest example come from Denmark. So I think that even if there are no examples so far with the new, let's say, regulation, also because it's a quite new regulation, I think it's possible, and I think this should move from the experiences, already existing experiences of the cooperatives. I don't know if Francesco agrees, or do you have any other comment?
No, I fully agree. I think it's more a matter of when, like these new approaches gonna apply also to renewable district heating networks. Also because I think we talk a lot in energy communities about how to define the boundary of the energy community. Well, when you have a renewable district heating network, it's just easier. I mean, the boundary is physical, it's already there. People who are connected also are already connected, so.
Good. As I see, our time is moving very fast. My last question would be for the first presenters. How do you imagine the future configuration of renewable energy communities? Will it be geographically or virtually defined? And on which scale do you think it will be applied best? On the neighborhoods, villages, cities? How do you see it in the future?
No, Chiara, for example, want to answer related also to ènostra hope in the future. In my opinion, as I told in the first presentation, we are trying to have a greater area defined not by the medium to low voltage transformer, but higher to medium. In other nations, France or Spain is defined by the distances between the different user and prosumers, for example. I ask to Chiara to answer which are the hope of ènostra, for example.
Yes, so I totally agree with Giulio about the cabin and the limits that pose to the renewable energy communities at the moment. And for us, for example, we think that the measure would be the city, when the city, for example, is a small village of 618 inhabitants, Villanova Forru, the village I was talking about before. The village has 4 transformation cabins, and it's really small. So you can see that 4 renewable energy communities for the village, it's really inefficient. And in this case, I would say like we should be able to realize one single energy community for all the citizenship there. Of course, also neighborhood renewable energy community, if the city is bigger enough, it is an option, but we should not limit, like the limit should be upper side more than downsizing. So this is my opinion. Yeah. Also because it can be a really good way to involve all the community, all the citizens of a city into the project and make them benefit from it.
You, Mr. Brandolin, do you agree?
For a technical point of view, of course, the bigger the better. In this case, the more variables they have, the better they combine, and a combination of profiles is what gives the best chances to optimize that consumption and to manage the energy. So the limit would be, of course, set up by authorities, but from a technical point of view, not only physical boundaries, but also an interaction in between will absolutely make a difference. Thermal, electric mobility, and electric consumption put it together will create a very big difference compared to what we have now. And this is the way we see it. If what today the consumptions are already there, so you have industrial and commercial consumptions in today, while residential consumption is mostly focused on evenings or weekends. So a simple merging of those 2 or 3 profiles would make a difference. So technically, there is no limits to an integration, but the network limits, and the bigger and the more mixed, the better.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, our time is up, so we have to close today's session. Thank you all for all the presenters to join and to present. Thank you for Agencja Friuli Venezia Giulia for organizing this session. I hope to see you all on our next session, workshops, and have a lovely evening and good weekend. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Bye.